Yeah, dinosaur feathers. First of all, I need to make certain that this little bit of kit is... How about that? I love this iPad because I press this little button and it says here, look, well, you can't see it, it says here, create. So, now all I've got to do is draw and talk at the same time, which I realize is a bit like doing this. We'll see how we do. The distinguished biochemist and geneticist J.B.S. Haldane was having a discussion with a friend. And that discussion took a rather predictable turn. The friend said, "Look, no use you going on. I know exactly what you're going to say, and I know exactly what you're going to do next." Haldane promptly got down off his seat and did 2 backward somersaults. Then he resumed his seat and he said to his friend, "There, that's to prove to you that you're not always right." So this talk is going to be about the unexpected. And it's going to be about how we work with the unexpected. And it's also going to be about dinosaur feathers. I want you to imagine a world without birdsong. A world without birdsong. Now, I'm not asking you to think about the future, because human beings are very, very bad at predicting the future. A 4-year-old child turns out to be better at playing the stock market than a financier. A financier turns out to be just a little bit better than an astrologer. And do you know, in a major study on experts and their predictions, it turns out that most of them were really no better than the toss of a coin. In his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman asked the question, is a shy, meek, and tidy person with a need for order and a passion for detail, are they more likely to be a librarian or a farmer? Well, the answer is that, surprisingly, farmers outnumber librarians 20-1. I was listening to a podcast not that long ago. A seismologist was talking about how he lived on the San Andreas Fault. He was actually far more nervous, far more worried about the crosstown traffic. That's supposed to be a car, just in case. So let's talk about the past, because we can be a bit more sure of the past, can't we? Can we? A time when there was no birdsong. 230 million years ago. 230 million years ago, a time when there was no birdsong because there were no birds. No birds. Just dinosaurs looking up into an empty sky. 230 million years ago. 10 million years later, still no birds. 100 million years later, still no birds. That's the thing, you see. If you were living at that time, you wouldn't be thinking to yourself, it's a pity there aren't any twittering things up in the trees. Birds would be outside of your frame of reference, entirely outside of it. So too would giant asteroids. But 60 million years before the asteroid struck, along came Caudipteryx. Now, Caudipteryx lived in the Cretaceous period, and his fossilized remains were found in China, along with the remains of 30 other species of feathered dinosaur. It's about the size of a peacock, couldn't fly, so the feathers are a bit useless, aren't they? Well, actually, no. They're for sex. They're for display. That's what artists do, isn't it? Pictures at an exhibition. The curator, doyen of art criticism in America, Dave Hickey, he said that he came to art because of artists, but he also came to it for the sex and the drugs. Certainly at the high end of the business, there's an awful lot of that sloshing around. I'm lucky if I get tea and biscuits. And you may not like the idea that the same primitive drive that puts feathers on dinosaurs also puts pictures on your wall. But, I was thinking about this. A Damien Hirst spin painting is pretty, isn't it? So are feathers. Birds, however, were not expected. They were Rumsfeldian unknowns. They just happened to happen over time. Huge amounts of it. But dinosaur feathers had to happen first. Let's give you some more numbers and another bird. I want to talk about the billiard ball experiment, which is cited in Nassim Nicholas Taleb's book, The Black Swan. Now, swans turn out to be a really good analogy for the unexpected and the improbable, because in the Middle Ages, the defining characteristic of a swan was that it was a large white bird. If it was a large bird of any other colour, it couldn't be a swan. And then someone noticed black swans, and that was the end of the all swans are white model. The flat earth model worked pretty well until Columbus stumbled on America. I just wonder how many other models we have in our heads that are unhelpful, useless, redundant. Okay, some more numbers. The billiard ball experiment is a computer model created by the mathematician Michael Berry. And the question is this: how many billiard balls on a billiard table can we log and predict and calculate? Can we work out the movements, where they're all going to end up? So you get the idea. You whack the ball and it bounces around. But where will it go? Where will it end up? Well, the astonishing news is that mathematics can accurately predict 2 impacts. That's it, just 2. It so happens, according to Berry, that if you want to predict 9 impacts, 9 bounces of the ball, then you have to factor in the gravitational pull of everyone standing near the table. Say you wanted to calculate 56 impacts, then every single elementary particle in the universe would have to be factored in to your calculations. A single electron separated from us, the other side of the universe, 10 billion light years away from you, a few more noughts, figures in the calculation because it has a meaningful effect, would you believe, on the outcome. So, I wonder how many billiard balls there are in the auditorium today bouncing around. Now, for this bit of the talk, what I wanted to do was I wanted to draw a brain, but I've been practicing brains all week and I can't do them. So I'm going to do some jelly on a plate instead. The closest I can get. We go back to our backward somersaulter, JBS Haldane. He said that after all his years of study, he still didn't know why he did what he did. Chris Frith, Emeritus Professor of Neuropsychology at UCL, he said that we think we have access to what we're doing, but actually we don't. That's the problem. The problem is for us that 90% of what we do is outside of our consciousness. 90%. You think you know where you're going, you think you know what you're up to, but actually you don't. Does that look like a keyhole to you? We're getting there. Oh, thank you, thank you. You're sitting on the sofa, you're watching the TV, and your brain is getting up to all sorts of stuff behind your back that you don't know about. Just like the family cat, or some other long-eared creature. Steve Jobs said that we think life is like some dot-to-dot drawing. We think it's like a dot-to-dot. We see dots leading up to where we are, and we think there are going to be dots leading away from where we are. But actually, in truth, there are no dots waiting for you out there. No dots at all. So how do we cope in a dotless world that's entirely unpredictable, where birds were not expected and feathers happened? How do we cope? Well, make plans by all means. But be prepared. Fortune favors the prepared mind. So said Alexander Fleming. And he should know. He's a great scientist, but a sloppy one. And he left his laboratory in such a mess one weekend that when he returned on the Monday morning, mold was growing in his Petri dishes. But he didn't say, "Oh, what an idiot I am, it's all gone wrong." No, he studied his mold juice, as he called it. Later, he called it penicillin. Life isn't like a dot to dot. And painting isn't like a dot to dot either. If an artist knows exactly what he or she is going to be doing, then it's not creative, is it? You're just doing exactly as you've done before. And if you do as you've done before, you'll get what you've always got. So, in order to be creative, you have to give to art what art does not have. Those are the words of Francis Bacon. The words of some other great artists now. Powell Clay, make the accidental essential. J.M.W. Turner, I never lose an accident. And some more numbers for you. Turner was painting for, I'd say, a little bit more than 50 years. And in that time, he must have painted, well, actually it's known, he did paint 24,000 watercolours. 24,000. So I would suggest to you that under those conditions, accidents will happen. And that is why so many of the artists I know are this complex mixture of arrogance and humility. They know that their art, like life, is a messy, branching bush. And no one knows where or when the fruit will develop. But they work hard to make it happen. For display, for sex, drugs, rock and roll, for money, even for art, music, dance, drama, literature, poetry, all these things, as Professor Mark Pagel, who's the head of the Evolution Research Lab in Reading, said, all these things are the glue that binds our culture together. It's as useful as feathers on a dinosaur. Sometimes, when we make art, we may hear birdsong. Sometimes, when we look at art, we fly. Thank you very much.